Chapter 91 Cheng Ling, are you Doraemon? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The frozen atmosphere in the camp thawed as laughter filled the air. Bai Muchuan waited for the merriment to die down, then pumped his fist with a grin. Count me in. I'm behind the boss 100%. Whatever the boss says goes for me too. Cheng Ling lowered her hand, instantly silencing the group. Alright, let's divide into teams. We have 32 people total, so we'll split into 5 groups. Cheng Ling stood. Judging by where everyone was sitting, they could form 6-person teams, not counting her or the cameraman. Okay, first team, you're on campfire duty. Keep it burning, rotate the jerky to prevent it from over-drying, and handle the food waste. Anything that decomposes, bury it. Non-degradable stuff, bag it up and we'll pack it out. Second, third, fourth, and fifth teams, you're with me to build some shelters. Build shelters. Like the makeshift lean-to you threw together last night? Producer Lin asked, curious. Old Turtle Dove and Sui Chow were clueless about Cheng Ling's wilderness shelter skills, so they chimed in, what lean-to? Hang on, Cheng Ling replied. She dragged over a branch about 5 feet tall, roughly as thick as a calf, and propped it against the broken end of the dead tree she'd snapped earlier. Instantly, the frame of a pyramid took shape. Seriously, you just broke that dead tree, and you already planned to use it? Sui Chow's eyes widened. What can I say? In a situation like this, I'm all about conserving energy. No need to waste extra effort, Cheng Ling said, grabbing vines and smaller branches from the ground, quickly starting to weave. The branches interlocked, creating a sturdy structure. In no time, 3 sides were complete. A perfect, pyramid-shaped shelter stood before them. Old Turtle Dove was itching to try it himself. He'd built similar shelters, but he was never as fast or as skilled as Cheng Ling. Miss Cheng, what can we do to help? Second team, find branches around 5 feet tall, shorter than yourselves and about as thick as your arms or legs. Third team, look for dry vines, long, thin branches, but watch out for thorns. Fourth team, gather dry pine needles, leaves, or broad leaves to use for ground cover. Fifth team, collect and organize all the branches everyone brings, and help me build a larger shelter. Of the 32 people, there were 9 women and 23 men. Cheng Ling planned to build 1 large shelter, 1 medium shelter, and 3 small ones. She designated a small one for Jiang Qilan and the medical team captain, making it easier to care for Jiang Qilan. Another small one went to Yang Zhao and Lu Dengfeng, giving the newlyweds some privacy, with Yang Zhao able to provide medical care and support. She would take a small one for herself. She hated being crowded, it made her feel unsafe. Given the choice, she would always sleep alone. The medium shelter, positioned in the center of the camp, would house the 7 women besides herself and Yang Zhao. The remaining large shelter would accommodate everyone else. Cheng Ling created a watch schedule with teams 1 through 5 rotating shifts. Each shift would be measured by the burning time of a cattail, about 100 minutes or just over an hour and a half. Her team assignment seemed random, but she considered several factors. First, members of each team shouldn't be total strangers to avoid awkward silences during their watch. Second, she considered gender, ensuring that each team had women, but not too many. Women were more perceptive and genetically predisposed to hearing subtle sounds in the night, allowing them to detect danger earlier. After all, women raise babies and are more attuned to cries and approaching predators. Men, on the other hand, could offer a sense of security. Third, age. Older team members usually went to bed and woke up earlier. Younger people tended to stay up late, and forcing them to rise early would be miserable. Therefore, Cheng Ling placed the older individuals in the 4th and 5th teams, allowing them to maintain their natural sleep patterns. Everyone pitched in to gather the requested materials. As they say, many hands make light work. In under an hour, Cheng Ling had erected all 5 shelters, large, medium, and small. The large and medium shelters resembled rectangular, centralized tents, differing only in size. Standing before the shelters, everyone felt a strange sense of accomplishment. We built this awesome shelter. I found that branch. I helped hold up that frame. Cheng Ling was genuinely exhausted. however, she didn't show a trace of fatigue, maintaining her usual composure as she carefully explained the rotation schedule in detail. After finalizing the watch schedule, Cheng Ling headed to Jiang Qilan and the medical team captain's small shelter. Jiang Qilan hadn't moved since the initial pyramid shelter was constructed. Cheng Ling had instructed him to rest. Now, as the medication wore off, his wound started to throb and become slightly inflamed. He was in a semi-conscious state, moaning softly in his sleep. "How is he?" Cheng Ling asked softly, bending down to speak to the medical captain. "Not too bad, just a slight fever. We've used up the ice packs," the captain replied. "It's good that we can control the temperature. If it keeps climbing, things could get dicey." When they'd set out to find people, they never expected to be stranded. Most of the medical supplies were left back at the program's base camp. Cheng Ling paused, then said to the medical captain, "Wait here." She got up and went to her backpack, rummaging through it until she found several small, unopened bags of sanitary napkins. Opening one, she carefully poured boiled and disinfected water onto the pad. Once it was fully saturated, she carried it to the shelter and handed it to the medical team leader. "Use this to cool him down. When it warms up, replace it with another one. Don't throw the used ones away. Put them in a ventilated place to dry. They can be recycled." The medical team leader took the cold, water-soaked sanitary napkin. A perfect physical cooling tool. Refreshing and comfortable, bid farewell to high temperatures and enjoy angelic care. "Cheng Ling, are you like Doraemon?" the medical team captain asked sincerely. "You're amazing." "Not really. I just happen to know a little more about this than you do." The captain thought to himself, "I think you know a little more about everything than we do." Cheng Ling watched as the medical team captain placed the sanitary napkin on Jiang Qian's forehead. The cameraman diligently captured it all, which later resulted in an unexpected endorsement deal for Jiang Qian, sanitary napkins. Chapter 92, Foster Father #039, S Nightmare. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cheng Ling knelt down to check Jiang Qian's wounds, gently lifting his clothes. There was no bleeding, and his temperature, while high, was still within a normal range. A fever, within limits, is actually a good thing. It's the body's way of fighting off the virus. White blood cell production increases, antibodies are synthesized more actively, the liver detoxifies more efficiently, and circulation and metabolism speed up, all aiding recovery. However, a fever shouldn't last too long or get too high. Otherwise, it can disrupt bodily functions. A spiking, persistent fever, or signs like irritability or convulsions, are definitely dangerous, so, he needed careful monitoring. Cheng Ling addressed the medical team leaders. Teams 3, 4, and 5, your people are on. Keep a close watch. I've arranged for the next 3 teams to relieve you later. I'm going to get some rest, call me if anything comes up. Got it. Cheng Ling told the first team to take over and sent the other teams back to their tents to rest. She also made sure the cameraman got some sleep. Satisfied with her arrangements, she went back to her own tent. She took off her coat, covered herself, and lay on her back, watching the firelight flicker. Okay, time for sleep. 3, 2, 1. Cheng Ling drifted off. Meanwhile, in America, Amos Joes, Cheng Ling's adoptive father, let out a blood-curdling scream in his sleep. "Ling, Cheng, leave me alone. Get away." But he was drenched in sweat, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape, twitching and thrashing in bed. He seemed to be reliving something terrifying beyond imagination. "Dr. Ken, what should we do? Should we wake him?" "Absolutely not." The renowned neurologist, hired at great expense, scribbled notes rapidly. He told Amos's wife, he's essentially sleepwalking. Forcing him awake abruptly could severely shock his nervous system, possibly causing permanent damage. The pretty young wife dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "You mean we can only wait for him to wake up on his own?" "Yes." The doctor said, "I need to ask you some questions. For the sake of the patient, please be completely honest." Amos's wife nodded. But I've only been married to Amos for less than 6 months, so I might not have all the answers. That's all right, the doctor replied. Okay, ask away. How long has he been experiencing this? About 10 days. He has nightmares every night. I think it's because he just became governor and is under a lot of pressure. The doctor remained neutral. I overheard him mentioning a name in his sleep. Do you know this person? Do you know anything about their relationship with your husband? That the little wife bit her lip. She knew, how could she not? For a while, she'd even suspected that the dark-haired Asian woman was Amos's lover. She'd hated her, viewed her as an enemy, and now, she was dead, all that worry for nothing. But wait a minute, it seemed like Amos's nightmares had started around the time that Asian woman, Cheng Ling, died. Should she tell the doctor? The little wife hesitated. Amos had strictly forbidden anyone from mentioning Cheng Ling. So, she finally said, I don't know her. The doctor's eyes flickered to her hand, which was unconsciously clenching the handkerchief. Untrained people often make involuntary movements when lying, things like avoiding eye contact, increased heart rate, dry mouth, slight sweating, fidgeting. How's his appetite been? He's been eating less lately. He barely touches his food and seems afraid to go to sleep. The doctor scribbled in his notebook. Finally, he snapped the book shut. I think I understand. As for medication, continue with the prescription from the state hospital. He should avoid alcohol and smoking, and get more outdoor exercise. If it's connected to the person he mentioned in his sleep, I suggest you talk to him about her. It might help. That's impossible. The little wife blurted out, realizing her mistake. She quickly clamped her mouth shut. She had just claimed not to know the person Amos was talking about, but now she was saying it was impossible to talk to her. The doctor gave her a knowing look. Without another word, he turned and left. The little wife sighed in relief. Bodyguards escorted the doctor to a taxi waiting outside Amos's mansion. The driver was a handsome, muscular blonde man. Where to? Mulholland Drive. The car pulled away. Once they were clear of the mansion, the driver spoke. Well, that the doctor raised an eyebrow. As the new leader of the H Rangers, and Amos's right-hand man, you're coming to me for information instead of asking Amos directly? What's going on? Do you have a problem with him? Or do you think he's keeping something from you? That the driver was indeed the new leader of the H Rangers, Nolan Lamson. Chapter 93. I always feel that she is not dead. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cut the crap. If you're looking for an early grave, keep digging. Nolan Lamson snapped. Ouch, touchy, touchy. The doctor unbuttoned his white coat and crossed his legs in the back seat. When I dropped by, Amos was still thrashing around in his sleep, kept muttering, Cheng Ling, leave me alone. Cheng Ling, that your old hard-ass captain you used to bitch about. The one who trained you like you were made of steel. She bought the farm, you're off the hook, no more of her personal hell, and you're sitting pretty as the new captain. Shouldn't you be doing a happy dance? Damn it. Happy? Hell no. I wish I'd gone down with her. Nolan slammed his fist on the steering wheel, the car screeching in protest. Pedestrians jumped and glared as they drove off. Gone down with her? The doctor's tone was blunt. You're moving too slow. You totally had a thing for her. You dated enough women, don't you know what love is? I don't know. Too late now, it's all over. She's gone. Haven't seen her in my dreams once since then. I screwed up so bad. Last time I saw her, we were fighting, and I called her arrogant. Worst part is, she was right. Nolan's voice was rough, the veins in his hand bulging as he gripped the wheel. I wanted to come back and tell her I was sorry, but I watched them lower her into the ground. Someone like her, so damn strong, just shredded, like a rag doll after a lawnmower got to it. Even the best mortician couldn't put her back together. Amos told me she and some drug lord went out together in a blaze of glory. Figured he was joking, but she was really dead. Blown to bits so bad, they couldn't gather them all up. The doctor's eyes narrowed behind his glasses. If she's dead, why are you digging into Amos? You got a hunch? Doc, you've got the gift of gab. Can't help myself. Life back in the States is a drag. This place is a nice break. And I'm a great listener. Spill the beans, maybe I'll spot something you missed. Nolan licked his lips. I can't do this without a stiff shot of the good stuff. TSK. The doctor slipped off his gold-rimmed glasses and stowed them in his bag. We agreed that wasn't part of the deal. Nolan pulled a wad of cash from his pocket and tossed it into the back seat without looking. Is that enough? That the doctor didn't flinch. He leaned over and gathered the bills one by one. Only a fool turns down money. You can't trust anyone, only money. He kissed a bill he'd picked up, dead serious. Money doesn't stab you in the back. $10 is $10. You don't have to pretend it's 100, or worry about it shrinking to 1. It is what it is, always. 10 minutes later, they were in the doctor's private wine cellar. 30-year Macallan. The doctor pulled a bottle with a silver stag's head from the wine rack, dropped a couple of ice balls into a whiskey glass. The amber liquid swirled around the ice, making a satisfying clink. He poured 2 glasses, handed one to Nolan. Nolan tossed it back. Hey, hey, hey. Don't waste my prime liquor like that. I'm paying for it. I'll drink it how I damn well please. Nolan poured himself another, his eyes growing darker. Easy there. The doctor poured him another, looking pained. This time, Nolan took a slow sip, letting the alcohol numb his tongue. I might be losing it. I keep thinking she's still alive. She always said she wanted to be free. I even wondered if she used the bomb as a way out. I had to get a piece of her tissue and run a DNA test. The doctor didn't ask the results, tears welled in Nolan's eyes. That wasn't supposed to be how it ended for her. She was meant to be free as the wind, no one telling her what to do. Not lying in some cold, hard box. He roared. The doctor had never seen Nolan cry. Always figured him for a stone-cold dude. He waited quietly for him to get a grip. Nolan quickly composed himself, took another sip of the whiskey. I think that her body was so beat up to cover up the real cause of death. It's just a feeling I have. So, you started looking at Amos? Amos hasn't been sleeping and doesn't eat. Says he misses Cheng Ling too much. But something about his sadness feels off. It's all just a hunch. I can't go at this head on. Walk easy and don't let Amos catch on your sniffing around. The doctor's voice was low. He is one mean son of a gun. I know. Nolan put down his glass, met the doctor's eyes. Can't help what's swirling around in my head. I gotta know what really happened to Cheng Ling, even if it gets me into deep water. You think I'm an idiot? Maybe. The doctor took a sip of his own drink. But this world would be a better place with more idiots like you in it. Nolan clinked glasses with the doctor. To this messed up world. To this messed up world. The doctor echoed, taking a drink. What's your play? Find a way to poke around without tipping off Amos. I heard Cheng Ling met up with one of her squad mates the night before she died. I want to talk to that guy. Going to all that work, Ling in heaven will feel thankful. Nolan smiled bitterly. That woman never felt thankful about anything. She had no heart. You have no idea, she would practically torture me during training. It was like the devil from hell was teaching me. The doctor refilled his glass in silence. For the next couple of hours, it was the same old song, Nolan ranting about how crazy Cheng Ling was, how ruthless, how iron-fisted, how completely over the top. The doctor listened, a strange longing growing in his chest. Too bad he never got to meet this amazing, fascinating woman while she was still alive. Cheng Ling opened her eyes. She'd been having a bittersweet dream. In it, she was still captain of the Special Forces unit, sitting around a campfire in the thick of the woods, shooting the breeze with her team. They would also barbecue, but it was not so beautiful. A bunch of rough men and women just hacked up the meat with knives and threw it on the fire, didn't matter if it was charred black or bloody in places. They didn't bother with spices, just sprinkled on some sea salt and scarfed it down. Bitter, really bitter, but it made her miss it all the same. Should she go check on them? See how they're doing? Cheng Ling wondered, maybe she would just take a peek, just one peek. Chapter 94. Could it be that they are discussing something that I cannot bear to hear? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cheng Ling took a couple of minutes to collect herself. A few minutes later, she sat up. The third group was huddled around the campfire, the cattail grass they'd burned for kindling now half gone. She figured she'd slept close to 4 hours. Cheng Ling grabbed her phone to check. Ugh. 0 bars and a measly 7% battery. Sighing, Cheng Ling tucked her phone away, tied up her hair, and emerged from her tent. Her tent was pitched on the edge of the camp, closest to where any pursuers might be lurking. That way, whether it was a wild animal or someone after them, she'd be the first to know. She trusted herself more than anyone else. A truly strong person didn't put their life completely in someone else's hands. Cheng Ling made a little noise to announce her presence, not wanting to startle the others. Hey, Cheng, you're up. That it was one of the young women from the program crew. Cheng Ling remembered she was a field assistant. Yeah. You didn't sleep long, did you? Nothing much happening. Why don't you grab some more shut-eye? Sui Chow, another member of the group, chimed in. It's cool. I don't need much sleep. This was enough, Cheng Ling said, settling into a cross-legged position by the fire. The others looked tired from the day's trek, but they also had this giddy, first-time adventure vibe going on, exhausted but happy, no fear or worry in sight. Oh, right. Didn't the cameraman say we had to wake him the second you were up? Yeah, he was all over it, promised us major eats. I'll go get him. Cheng Ling, if everyone were this dedicated, we'd be colonizing Mars already. A moment later, the cameraman stumbled over, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his hair a total mess. Cheng. Roll camera. Cheng Ling gestured for him to go ahead. This group didn't have Bai Muchuan's natural charisma, or his people skills. Even Sui Chow was an introvert, plus, with the camera rolling, it made it even tougher for people who weren't used to being on film to act natural. They were afraid of saying the wrong thing, so, the camp fell into a long, awkward silence, dead air worthy of the middle of nowhere on a Tuesday night. The others looked at Cheng Ling, feeling like they needed to say something. They wanted to, but they didn't know where to start. Cheng Ling poked at the dried meat roasting over the fire, flipping it over. The bonfire crackled, sending sparks swirling into the dark sky. The flames danced across Cheng Ling's face, making her look so pure, so innocent, almost fragile. For a moment, Cheng Ling seemed like some kind of wood nymph, who didn't belong in the human world. What? Were we not just having a grand old time? Cheng Ling asked, breaking the silence. Then she cracked her neck from side to side, the vertebrae sounding like firecrackers going off. Her tone shifted completely. Or were you guys plotting something you didn't want me to hear? The third group, still caught in the illusion that Cheng Ling was a forest fairy. Illusion shattered. This wasn't a fairy. This was a freaking tank. A woman who could take down a couple of Tibetan mastiffs with her bare hands, kill a 400-pound boar, and snap a tree in half with her elbow. Lin Dayu my ass. This Lin Dayu could uproot a willow tree, no sweat. The atmosphere instantly lightened. The young tech guy, with his thick glasses, pushed them up his nose and said seriously, we'd never talk about you in a place where it wasn't safe to do so, at least, not somewhere you could reach us. Yeah. Besides, Cheng, you're awesome. If we were talking about you, it would be good stuff. Before the show, no promises, the field girl said, deadpan. Before the show, everyone in the crew was a hater. We were all dark fans. Everyone exchanged knowing glances. But the girl pumped her fist. Now, we're all converts. We're already fighting over who gets your used gear from the show. I call dibs on your right sock. Cheng Ling. She subtly wiggled her toes, feeling the hole in the big toe of her right sock. She had a sudden feeling of crisis, like once she reached a safe zone, she would face the crisis of running naked. Chapter 95. They are all born by their parents, so why is there such a big difference? You are listening at novelfull.audio. To be honest, Cheng Ling said, carefully studying the faces of everyone from the three teams, I'm seriously worried about your program team's sanity. You all need to get checked out. You can skimp on anything else, but not on healthcare. Help. Cheng Ling, your tongue is sharper than a viper. Have you been moonlighting at a comedy club? Seriously, has no one ever punched you for your sarcastic remarks? Punch me? Who would dare? Cheng Ling laughed. Even if they did, they couldn't win. That everyone else erupted in laughter, like a bunch of escaped lunatics. The young guy with the thick glasses from the on-site tech support team was laughing the hardest, rocking back and forth, when something slipped out of his pocket, a brand new RE Global Network game console. Several games were hugely popular among young people, with many sacrificing their health to binge play. The game itself wasn't the issue, it was the console. Cheng Ling had worked on a part of this console's production. The satellite communication fusion technology, RET, was a company with deep pockets, and the boss was a hardcore gamer obsessed with eliminating network lag. He'd spent billions launching a satellite specifically for their game consoles. Cheng Ling's phone was limping along at 7% battery, but if she could do some minor tweaking to both her phone and the game console, she could tap into RET's powerful satellite and send a message. Basically, she'd have a super satellite phone that could get a signal from anywhere on Earth. The tech guy bent down to grab the console, but a slender, assertive hand shot out and snagged it first. It was Cheng Ling. The tech guy just stared. Cheng Ling smiled. Everyone except Sui Chao, even the cameraman, saw that look and that smile, and felt a jolt of recognition. That smile. It radiated predatory ruthlessness. It was a smile of pity for the drone about to be plundered. It was on. Hey, buddy, that's a sweet console, Cheng Ling said, speaking as if to a toddler. Gimme, okay? I'll buy you 10 when we get back. The tech guy thought, I really want to, but please stop smiling like that, it's freaking me out. Cheng Ling saw him nod hesitantly, grabbed the console, went back to her tent, and returned with her backpack. You wanna play games? Sui Chao asked. Nah, I'm gonna do some hacking. Whether we can end this nightmare early depends on how successful I am. Cheng Ling patted the soon-to-be dismembered console and phone sympathetically. She pulled out her little box cutter from the bottom of the bag. It doubled as a screwdriver. Then came the drone's crucial components, the onboard computer and sensors. These would maximize her chances of success. Hey, can someone find a stand and hang the camping lamp about 3 feet off the ground? I need more light. Also, move around a bit, try not to block the light. And I can't get too close to the campfire, don't want to fry any of these parts. And, cameraman, don't zoom in on the actual hacking process, okay? Just keep the shot wide on everyone's faces. The cameraman gave her the thumbs up. * whatever, the audience only cares about Cheng Ling, anyway. Who's gonna watch her tinker? After the camping lamp was set up, Cheng Ling found some flat rocks, spread her coat over them, and smoothed it out, creating a makeshift workbench. Everything was ready. Cheng Ling stretched her wrists, fingers, and neck, then bent over to dissect the phone and console. Rebuilding was way harder than tearing down. Dismantling the drone by the campfire was easy enough. Cheng Ling could practically do it in the dark, but putting it all back together and modifying it. If she slipped, broke a chip, or crossed wires, she'd fail. She needed patience, precision, a steady hand, and serious technical know-how. What to burn, what to connect, what to cut, what to assemble. Everyone was mesmerized by Cheng Ling's intense concentration. Not a single person from the third team even noticed the cattail they were using as a timer had burned out. Even if they had, they probably wouldn't have wanted to go to bed. They say men look sexiest when they're working hard, but Cheng Ling's dedication was not only hot, but strangely calming. Watching her work, people couldn't help but think, ***, we were all born from our parents, so how can there be such a huge gap, ***, how can she be, and do all that, ***, what can't she do, ***, look at her fingers flying across the devices, it was like watching a concert pianist. ***, they're just hands. Why does it take me forever to untangle my earbuds, but she can connect wires thinner than hair, **** No wonder they say reincarnation is an art, **** but God didn't give me the instruction manual, About an hour later, Cheng Ling was done, the console was completely stripped down, revealing its motherboard, and the phone was reassembled, but now with extra wires linking the console's motherboard and the drone's onboard computer. The tech guy from support was practically drooling with envy, back in the day, Tony Stark built an Iron Man suit in a cave. Now, Cheng Ling's hacking a satellite phone in the middle of nowhere, amazing, Cheng Ling put down the screwdriver and turned on the phone, waiting for it to boot up. She felt a surge of nerves. Finally, the boot screen disappeared, the phone's display changed, it showed a command prompt, ready to accept lines of English code. She entered a string of letters and numbers. After typing hundreds of lines of code, Cheng Ling tapped the enter key on the screen. Execute this command. Yes, the program is running. 92%, 88%, 63%. 0%. Chapter 96. The brothers are scattered. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The program booted up, awaiting instructions. Cheng Ling sighed with relief and tapped away at her phone's touchscreen. Her battery was almost dead. She was in a race against time. Command loading. Command loaded. Commencing global grid positioning analysis. Estimated time, 5 seconds. Analysis complete. Current location, N46 degree 34 14.95, U1 18 degree 34 52.18. Precise map coordinates. Without a second thought, Cheng Ling fired off a satellite text message to Brother Cheng. Our exact location, N46 degree 34 14.95, 118 degree 34 52.18. Everyone safe. The gang hasn't caught up. Based on my analysis, they're likely within an 8 to 10 mile fan-shaped area southwest of us. Phone's about to die. It's 3:46 a.m. I'll wait 4 hours. We head due north at 7:46 a.m. After those 3 messages, Cheng Ling's phone battery gave out, the screen flickered, and died. The 3 groups held their breath, practically buzzing with anticipation. Cheng Ling smiled. We're good. 4 hours earlier. God damn it. Tank screamed, kicking Dolly. Where are they? I said, where the hell are they? Dolly went down hard. Tank planted a boot on his chest, pinning him, and pulled out his pistol, staring at the gun. Dolly trembled, speechless. You lying sack of shit. You said they'd come out of the woods. Tank racked the slide. I don't know. Dolly stammered, teeth chattering, then an idea hit him. Maybe they're lost. Yeah, that's it. They're lost. Probably crying for their mamas out there right now. Tank holstered his weapon and stepped back, a smile creeping across his face. Hey, what happened to Dolly? Must be tired. Someone give him a hand up. Nobody moved. They were afraid of Tank's volatile temper. Dolly scrambled to his feet. I'm good. Tank checked his watch. Almost dawn. They'd searched from the logging yard all the way to the edge of the forest, 70-plus guys spaced 10 feet apart, combing the woods like a fine-tooth comb. Tank's eyes narrowed. They hadn't reached the exit. Maybe they were lost. Ha 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 ha. Tank roared with laughter. 70-odd men stood silently, watching him. When no one joined in, Tank stopped abruptly. These city slickers took a wrong turn. They're probably still wandering around in circles. Told you they wouldn't make it out. He pointed at a group of guys, maybe 10 or 20. You, and you, stay here at the edge of the woods. Wait for them to pop out. The rest of us are going back in. Tank took a couple of steps toward the forest, then realized nobody was following. His eyes bulged. He spun around, yelling, what the hell? Are you deaf? One of his guys found some courage. Boss, we've been walking for hours, haven't even had a sip of water. We're beat. They ain't going anywhere. Can't we take a break? Tank pressed his tongue against his teeth, his crew was losing faith. Was it because he'd executed that old man? Or was it his misjudgment? He'd been so sure at first, but now, what if they did escape the woods? No, no, no. Wild Boar Forest was practically unnavigable. He'd heard countless stories of locals getting lost for days. No way these city folks were getting out. That's right, just be patient. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, Tank grinned. Alright, I know you're tired. I'm taking you for a rest. The lumber transfer station is empty right now. Let's go crash there. The transfer station wasn't far, it was more like a simple platform. There was a small building for the guys who labeled and weighed the wood. The place was locked up tight, but Tank had someone smash the padlock with a brick. They pushed the door open and piled inside, one chair, a cabinet, and a wooden table. That was it. Tank, exhausted himself, plopped down in the chair. The 70+ others filed in silently and found places to sit on the floor. Tank was disgusted. What could he expect from these losers? All tired and miserable, when it came to splitting the loot, they were all over it. Full of tough talk, but useless when it came to action, not like that doctor, Lu Chi, smart, resourceful, and not afraid to speak his mind. Hell, not even as good as those 2 dogs. If those dogs were here, they'd have found them in minutes. Tank yawned, then yawned again. The men were huddled against the walls, some already snoring. Sleep was contagious, and Tank, as an addict, was even more susceptible. He rubbed his eyes, leaned back in his chair, and thought, those city folk. They're probably crying right now. He nodded off, his head lolling against the back of the chair. Chapter 97: Why Use a Butcher Knife to Kill a Chicken? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiang Qilan rolled into Xinjiang with a platoon of 36 Fengqing commandos. He linked up with Qing Busheng. You're Cheng Ling's brother? Jiang Qilan asked, sizing up Qing Busheng's worried face. They didn't look much alike. Still, you could see a family resemblance in their features. Yeah, Qing Busheng replied, cutting to the chase. Who are you? I'm the team leader, temporary instructor. Instructor, let's move out. Every second ticked off meant Ling was in more danger. We? Jiang Qilan raised an eyebrow. You want to come with us? Yes. No can do. Qing Busheng's expression was calm but firm. No, I'm going. I promise I won't slow you down or cause any trouble. Lay down the rules, and I'll follow them. I just can't sit around and wait. He couldn't stand being helpless. Jiang Qilan hesitated, then nodded. All right. If he wanted to get Cheng Ling on board, he had to consider her family, and if Cheng Ling wouldn't join his think tank, maybe her brother could be persuaded. Besides, Qing Busheng's file checked out, high IQ, steady, and prudent. Bringing him along shouldn't be a problem. Jiang Qilan pulled a satellite phone from his pack and handed it over. Swap your SIM card into this. Cell service is gonna be spotty in the forest. If Cheng Ling texts or calls, we don't want you missing it. Qing Busheng nodded, popped out his SIM card, and inserted it into the satellite phone. Jiang Qilan tossed him a bulletproof vest, which Qing Busheng put on without a word. He'd already texted his sister, letting her know he'd contacted the Jiang family and asked for their help, but the message kept failing to send. *sis, please be okay, star. They left downtown Xinjiang and headed for Xinjiang Forest Park. The trailhead being at the far end of the park. Jiang Qilan and the soldiers, decked out in black combat gear, marched grimly into the forest, moving with light, deliberate steps. Without lights, the group moved like a pack of black panthers in the dead of night. After a while, Jiang Qilan, who had excellent night vision, spotted something on the ground. He raised his hand. Everyone froze. Why the stop? Qing Busheng fretted, but he was an outsider. His best bet was to trust the pros. Jiang Qilan knelt, examining something in the undergrowth. A crumpled pack of Zhonghua cigarettes was lying amongst the fallen leaves. 3 or 4 smokes were left in the soft pack. Someone must have dropped it. Jiang Qilan pulled a flashlight from his belt and shined it on the ground. Based on the disturbed leaves, someone had taken a tumble, and the pack must have fallen out of their pocket. But they didn't notice. But that wasn't the main clue. The pack was covered in sawdust, the kind produced by saws at a lumber mill. Sniffing closer, he caught the faint smell of engine oil, the kind used in heavy machinery at mills or factories. Looking around, he spotted footprints imprinted in the decaying leaves. The tracks couldn't be more than 3 hours old. What did it mean? Had someone from the lumber mill been through here? It wasn't the show's crew. They'd never allow cigarettes in the forest, too risky. They'd have confiscated smokes from staff and guests before entering. So, drug dealers? They usually had a nicotine habit. If they couldn't satisfy it with drugs, they might grab a smoke or two. Bag it. Jiang Qilan signaled the soldiers to glove up and place the pack into an evidence bag. He drew his weapon, crouched low, and murmured, "Everyone be alert. Suspects might be close. Protect Mr. Cheng." The commandos hung on every word, treating each syllable as a priceless gem. Being on a mission with Jiang Qilan was a godsend. Though he'd been retired from the Chinese Special Forces for years, his legend still lived on. He was a bold, brilliant, and physically imposing figure. He could fly planes and pilot submarines, and he was a genius when it came to electronic communications. Rumor had it that he single-handedly boosted China's wartime electronic communication security and stability to an entirely new level, and his military honors were so numerous, they could fill a small box. To the soldiers, Jiang Qilan was a war god. So, when Jiang Qilan showed up at the Fengqing Commandos base, the battalion commander was floored, and when Jiang Qilan explained that he needed the commandos to help solve a case, and he'd be leading the team. Was war breaking out? Or some major international incident? When Jiang Qilan explained that he was just going after a crew of a few dozen drug dealers, the battalion commander was even more stunned. Huh? Using a sledgehammer to crack a nut? The soldiers chosen for the mission with Jiang Qilan were practically bursting with excitement, going on a mission with Jiang Qilan. It was a story they could tell their grandkids. After bagging the cigarettes, the team spread out into a triangle formation. Cheng Bushing was kept safe in the center. Jiang Qilan switched off the flashlight, closed his eyes, and reopened them. Adjusting to the darkness, he bent low, carefully studying the footprints. Even in the dark, it was easy enough to follow a large group. They moved silently through the jungle. Soon after following the tracks, Jiang Qilan reached the lumber distribution transfer station. He spread his fingers in the air, then clenched his fist, a signal for everyone to freeze. As the others watched, Jiang Qilan crept towards the station's guard shack, gun in hand. He was fast but utterly silent, like watching a high-budget action flick on mute. He reached the window, pressed his back against the wall, and peeked inside. Whoa! The room was full of large men, all of them asleep. Chapter 98: The Terrible Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Tank woke to a group of soldiers pointing guns at his head, he felt like he'd warped into some real-life version of a video game. He'd never seen so many soldiers with live ammo before. The handcuffs were what finally brought him fully awake. The other guys in the room started pleading, "I don't know anything. I'm just a delivery boy. He's the one who did it." Yeah, it was him. In less than 10 seconds, they were all ratting Tank out. A guy named Jiang Qilan searched Tank, finding no guns, ammo, drugs, or syringes, but he did pull out a black cell phone. Jiang Qilan held the phone in his palm, thought for a second, turned it off, and slipped it into his pocket. Then, he walked right up to Tank. "Tell me, where are the others?" Jiang Qilan asked, his voice low. Tank instinctively couldn't meet his eyes. It was weird because this guy was obviously good-looking, but all Tank felt was a gut-level fear. It was an invisible pressure, hard to put into words, like a guy with a fear of the ocean being thrown into a tiny boat, then looking down to see a shadow hundreds of times bigger than the boat swimming up from the depths. Like a guy with a fear of heights standing on a bungee-jumping platform, being pushed off, and realizing he wasn't strapped in. Like a guy with a fear of clusters seeing a moth's fat belly covered in dense white eggs with tiny black eyes, then being drowned by those eggs like a tidal wave, a primal disgust and fear he couldn't control. "I don't have a lot of patience," Jiang Qilan said, looking at Tank coldly. "I'll ask again, where are they?" Tank's tough guy act kicked in, and he stuck out his chin. "I fucking killed them all." Dali and the others were freaking out. Murder? That would make them accessories. No, 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 officer. They're alive and well. Still out in the woods. Officer, nobody's dead. They're all fine. The criminals all started talking at once. Jiang Qilan pulled out a spring-assisted knife from his waist, the blade snapping out. Shoo, quiet, Jiang Qilan said. Everyone shut up immediately. Tank stared at the knife, spitting. You can't just hit people, I'll sue you. That his words turned into screams of pain. Jiang Qilan held the knife steady and sliced through the flesh connecting his earlobe to his cheek. The skin there is thin, but it's full of nerves and blood vessels. After a little bleeding, the skin of his earlobe and cheek stuck together. Tank struggled, but the soldiers holding him were too strong. He couldn't move, this guy. Was he crazy? Why was he just using a knife without even warning him? Jiang Qilan made a tisk sound, reached out, and pinched Tank's earlobe, which was swollen like a cherry. He kneaded it between his thumb and index finger, and a few drops of blood oozed out. The pain made Tank whimper and tremble, but he couldn't speak. Tank was into pain. He enjoyed giving it, but he sure didn't like being on the receiving end. This was not fun at all, just terrifying and painful. Jiang Qilan turned to the other soldiers, his voice calm, like a teacher answering questions in class, slow and steady, his voice clear. The earlobe is full of nerves, so it's really painful, but it heals pretty fast. Even if you do this. Jiang Qilan tugged at the earlobe. Or this. He pinched it. Or this, he pulled the ear out to the side. All of these can cause intense pain. And this wound isn't serious enough to be considered a major injury. During an arrest, physical conflict and wounds like these are within the permitted range. They don't count when the wound is examined. And there are about 60 such spots on the human body. He turned back to Tank, looked him up and down like he was a piece of meat, and said casually, "Want to try them all one by one?" His eyes felt like they were physically touching him, and wherever they landed, Tank felt pain. Tank burst into tears. No, no, I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. Jiang Qilan snapped the knife shut. Tank flinched like a frightened bird. The sound made him tremble. Jiang Qilan walked over to Qin Busheng. Give me 2 minutes. I'll handle the interrogation. Qin Busheng nodded. Interrogation was confidential. No outsiders were allowed. Everyone else was let out, leaving only Jiang Qilan and Tank. Where are the people from the city? Jiang Qilan asked, sitting down and crossing his legs. We lost them at the lumber mill. We never saw them again. When did you start making and selling drugs? What's your sales process? Who's your boss? How much does your gang's leader know? Jiang Qilan fired off, then, remembering something, he added, don't leave anything out. Don't stall. My patience is limited. This was a good interrogation method. Don't let the guy think he has a choice whether to answer or not, or give vague answers. Don't give him time to think or make up stories. Make him feel like he's in a crisis, and you'll get the truth. Tank's eyes went wide. Don't leave anything out. He'd asked like 5 or 6 questions at once. If he had a brain that good, would he have failed so many tests in school? Wasn't he asking the impossible? This guy had no honor. Jiang Qilan crossed his legs, and click, he flicked open the switchblade again. Tank felt a jolt of pain in his earlobe. He calmed down. His eyes weren't bulging anymore. He answered honestly, I started selling drugs 2 years ago. Chapter 99. Will Cheng Ling be frightened? Will she hide and cry? You are listening at novelfull.audio. 2 minutes later, Jiang Qilan came out. Alright, you guys, numbers 1 through 30, you're on prisoner escort duty. Nobody talks to the prisoners unless I say so. Got it? And keep them safe. Someone might want to shut them up for good. Point 30 soldiers immediately circled up and rounded up the prisoners. 31 through 36, you're with me. We're heading into the forest for a rescue mission. The 6 soldiers, trying to hide their excitement, puffed out their chests and followed Jiang Qilan and Qin Baixing into the woods. According to Tank, the enemy is supposedly gone from the forest now, but believing the enemy is a fool's game, Jiang Qilan wasn't letting her guard down. First things first, they had to find where Cheng Ling buried that locator. Once they had it, they could narrow their search and move forward with the information she left. It was the best they had, let's face it. Finding Cheng Ling and the others in this huge forest was like finding a needle in a haystack. Plus, they had over 30 people in the program, and everyone's energy, strength, stamina, and nerves were already stretched thin. The lack of food and sleep was starting to take its toll. The thought made Jiang Qilan quicken her pace. This was no walk in the park. The path was treacherous, with twisted tree roots sticking out of the ground, thorny bushes everywhere, and surprise potholes that could send you sprawling. And every so often, you'd step on something slimy, like stepping on a rotting animal carcass. In the shadowy forest, every massive tree looked like a predator hiding in the darkness. With each step, the weight on her chest grew. The night felt thick as ink, smothering her senses. Asterisk, is she scared? Asterisk, is she hiding somewhere, crying her eyes out? Asterisk, is she cold, hungry, and terrified? Asterisk. Just imagining what his sister was going through was almost too much for Qin Baixing to handle. While Jiang Qilan scouted ahead, checking their surroundings, she noticed Qin Baixing's breathing getting heavy and ragged. Take it easy, Brother Cheng, Jiang Qilan said, trying to soothe him. They managed to get away from the bad guys. They're probably hunkered down somewhere safe. We'll find them before sunrise. Qin Baixing gritted his teeth, fighting back his worry. Okay. Thanks, instructor. They hiked for what felt like forever toward the red dot on the tracker. Finally, the dot appeared right in the center of the screen, but it was just a drone locator. It wasn't exactly pinpoint accurate. The red dot represented a forest area roughly 500 meters in diameter. Finding the actual locator was the only way to figure out which direction Cheng Ling and the others were headed. Brother Cheng, take a breather. You guys, split into pairs and start searching. Check for the locator in tree holes, bushes, and under the dirt, and use metal detectors. Qin Baixing immediately plopped down to rest, conserving his energy. Jiang Qilan stood there, replaying the live broadcast from desperate survival in her mind. Cheng Ling went to the stream, gathered cattails, and then looked up at the camera. The angle showed the stream had a southward bend of about 30 degrees. Map monitor, she said to a member of the commando team. The team member handed over a map display. It was basically an electronic version of a traditional paper map, displayed on a screen. You could zoom in and out, but it had no GPS function and wasn't affected by signals. First, he zoomed out, found their general location, and then zoomed back in, squinting to see the direction of the stream. Asterisk, got it. The bend in the stream matched the one captured when Cheng Ling asked them to cut the camera. And that location was directly north of their current position. Jiang Qilan led everyone to the area she had pinpointed and started sweeping the ground with a metal detector, searching for the camera hidden in the tree. Where would Cheng Ling hide the locator? Okay, if I were her. Jiang Qilan bent her knees slightly, lowering herself to Cheng Ling's height. She stayed hunched over, carefully scanning the area. The spot had to be secluded, but not too remote. And it should have something recognizable nearby as a landmark, not too close to the water, to avoid flooding that might damage the locator. And of course, she had to bury it carefully so nobody would spot it. Asterisk, this spot. Jiang Qilan's eyes landed on a large red rock near the stream. About 5 meters away stood a massive cork tree. The tree was peculiar. One side was thick with branches and leaves, while the other was practically bare. It was hard to miss. If she were Cheng Ling, she would definitely bury the locator under that tree. Check out that tree over there, Jiang Qilan directed. Before the metal detector even got close, it started screaming. Asterisk, bingo. Jiang Qilan cautiously approached the tree and knelt down to dig herself, afraid the soldiers might damage the locator. Cheng Ling had chosen a perfect spot. It used to be a small animal burrow, abandoned for some reason. Cheng Ling had carefully wrapped the locator in the plastic bag used to transport supplies and shoved it into the hole. Then, she covered it with dead branches and vines. Jiang Qilan gently pulled out the locator and held it in her palm, as if it were a priceless treasure. Now that we have the locator, we can get a better bearing on where they're headed, Jiang Qilan announced. Next, we're going to confirm that this is the path they took. Just then, Qing Baisheng's satellite phone rang 3 times in a row, cutting Jiang Qilan off. Our current exact location, N46 degree 34 14.95 N, E1 18 degree 34 52.18 E. Everyone's safe, and the criminals haven't caught up. Our best guess is they're southwest of us, about 13 to 16 kilometers away, spread out in a fan shape. Phone's about to die. It's 3:46 a.m. We'll stay put for 4 hours, then head north at 7:46 a.m. Jiang Qilan stared at the text messages, stunned. How is this possible? It's 3:46 a.m. How did they get a signal? But the bigger question was, how did she get longitude and latitude coordinates down to so many decimal places? It didn't make sense. It defied logic. Unless she could tap into the world's strongest satellite signal and somehow hack into the system, granting herself special access. Plus, she'd need a high-tech satellite receiver. Even the US military, with its military-grade satellites, top agents, and specialized receivers, might struggle to get this kind of precision, but they weren't the US military. They were just a bunch of actors in a small-time reality show, wandering around the backwoods of China, where technology was practically non-existent. Chapter 100 Eating Alone, hehehe. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cheng Ling stood up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. The camp lights were nothing special, and the bonfire danced. She'd been staring at those tiny wires for so long her eyes were burning. A pang of regret hit her. A few messages had come through just as she'd connected, but battery life was critical. She couldn't risk wasting it on texts. Hey, are you beat, sis? You could grab some shuttle, Sui Chow offered. Cheng Ling shook her head. Nah, just eye strain. I'm good. Your group's shift is over, time to tag in group 4. But I'm not tired. Seriously, not sleepy, not tired. Don't ditch me, sis. I just wanna hang for a bit. Cheng Ling poked at the fire. You guys crash hard during groups 1 and 2's watch. Yep. Out like a light. Group 2 practically had to pry me awake. The others in group 3 chimed in. Nobody wanted to give up their time with Cheng Ling. Having to part ways sucked, big time. Even sitting beside her now, basking in the firelight, felt like a premature goodbye party. Cheng Ling was mysterious and powerful, hard to believe this was the same woman who'd been ripped to shreds online. If you're so full of energy, help me sort this jerky, Cheng Ling said. She took down the pork that had been roasting by the fire. The hunk of meat, fire-dried and dehydrated, still clocked in at over 60 pounds. Cheng Ling laid the meat across a tree stump used as a cutting board. She'd left the skin on. Roasting it with the skin helped prevent the inside from burning, plus the crispy skin was a treat. It was slightly charred, a dark brown. To cook it right, the skin needed to be roasted hot enough to be edible, but the meat underneath was still raw, so she needed to slice it into strips for thorough roasting. I'll cut the meat into strips. You guys spread them on the branches and sprinkle on the spices, Cheng Ling said, handing them the bowl of seasoning left over from rendering the lard. Find some sticks that are about the same length, like long chopsticks. Keep turning the meat strips. This kind of jerky gets pretty tough. But it lasts forever. Keep it dry, and it'll keep for months. Nomadic peoples and folks in tough climates have been roasting meat this way for ages. I love tough, chewy meat. I prefer it a little juicy. I'm easy. I won't say no to any kind of meat, Sui Chow said. Huh, just admit you're a total pig, one of the girls joked. But seriously, Cheng Ling, you've probably heard this a million times, but your barbecue is amazing. Top notch. Yeah, seriously, Cheng Ling smiled, rolled up her sleeves, grabbed a meat-cutting knife, and began slicing. This is nothing fancy. We just happen to be here during the dry season. If the stream was full, we could catch fish. Let me tell you, my grilled fish is legendary. Just grab a few carp from the stream, gut M, scale M, score M, and slather on the seasoning. If you're out of seasoning, just use salt. Then find a stick, jam a wild fruit on the end, and shove the stick and fruit in the fish's mouth. Roast both sides over the fire. Eat it like a chicken leg. Unreal. Or find a thin slab of stone, heat it up over the fire, slice the fish super thin, and lay it on the stone. Cooks in like 30 seconds. That fish is so springy and flavorful. If you're by the ocean, snag some mackerel, blast it with heat until the skin's crackling, and the meat's juicy. No seasoning needed. You can't get enough. Everyone swallowed hard, weird, they'd been stuffed at dinner, almost sick. Now, suddenly, they felt like they'd digested everything and were hungry again. Girl, you're making me want to dive into the nearest river and catch some fish. But, ugh. Sui Chow scratched his head. Reality bites. Your first, casual step, just catch a few carp, is mission impossible. Cheng Ling gave Sui Chow a "this kid is hopeless" look. If you can't catch them, why not hit up the supermarket? Carp's cheap. Ha 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 ha. Oh God, Sui Chow and I are on the same wavelength. We're stuck in a dumb loop. Duh. If you can't catch it, just buy it. I'm dying here. That once the laughter died down, Cheng Ling continued, people should learn to connect with nature, get out of their concrete boxes, and find some fun that's good for the body and mind. The food you grill yourself might not be as fancy as what you get in a restaurant, but you'll get a huge sense of accomplishment. Maybe don't start with fish, it's a bit tricky. Try something easy, like grilled sausages, chicken wings, marshmallows, green peppers, stuff like that. A chorus of groaning stomachs erupted. Cheng Ling chuckled. The rumbling made her think of a summer night by a pond. Speaking of which, I haven't prepped the pig ears, noses, and tails. Want me to roast those for you? And I have some sausages and stuff in my backpack. Everyone nodded like crazy. Sure. The other groups are asleep. We're feasting solo. Hehehe. Group 3 rubbed their hands together like madmen. JPG. Let me finish cutting these strips first. Cheng Ling sped up her slicing.